We are talking today with one of the premier Elvis acts anywhere. This is Elvis Wade. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. Hey, it's great to talk to you again.
Now, you are a guy, you and I crossed paths, and I'm sure you don't remember because you do a million shows, but we talked probably 10 or maybe even 15 years ago. You did a show in Battle Creek, and I remember it because, number one, it was a fantastic show. You do Elvis incredibly well, and I remember you telling me about you met Elvis.
Yeah, Elvis came to see my show back in the early 70s. He had known about me for years. Long story about all that stuff. But I actually played Detroit. Promoters used to buy my show in the same cities he would be in because he would sell out immediately, and they would advertise. There weren't any Elvis impersonators then, but they would advertise, if you want to see the next best thing and you couldn't get a seat, we come see Elvis Wade. We would sell out too, so... I worked a lot of the same cities he was working, on the same day he worked the same, the city. So when he played the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, I played there at the same time. And a bunch of his entourage came, J.D. Sumner and the Stamps and a bunch of other people in his band actually came and seen the show and actually got up on stage with me and performed. But yeah, Elvis had known about my show for years before he did come to see me in the early 70s.
Good, and you had the chance to talk with him?
I didn't get a chance. Well, they brought him in. I knew that he was coming, and I knew the entourage, but, because of security, they kept all the lights down, and actually it was in Nashville. I was performing in Nashville, and he was in town recording an album. And, of course, everyone knew that he was recording the album. Mayborn Axton, who wrote Heartbreak Hotel, his first #1 hit, he called her Mama May. She's also Hoyt Axton's mom. Mm-hmm. But she brought him along with some other people. Of course, she and I were close friends. And they waited until everybody was seated, and then they brought him in about the second song of the show and just set him, and he was in a hat with a beard on. There was just no way he could go anywhere. And but anyway, he loved the show, gave me a standing ovation. And when the show was over and they turned the lights up, the people, always turned the lights up at the end of the show to try to hustle people out because we did a turnover show, 2 shows on the same night. And they hustled him, surrounded him, and grabbed him and hustled him right out the front door into a limo. But he called me. Then he called me back. So tried to talk to me. And I had hundreds of people around the autograph table, and by the time the security got to me, got through all the people and got me, and said, Elvis is on the phone and wants to talk to you. And it took him about 15 minutes. He hung up. So, just wasn't meant to be, I guess. I don't know. But, his stepmother, Dee Presley, worked with me for 5.5 years too. She moved to Nashville after prior to Elvis's death, and she told me all about what Elvis had said too. So I had knowing the Jordanaires and everything. Elvis, he loved what I did, but I was the only guy doing it back in those days.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Millions of guys around.
This was the 70s, and this was when Elvis was still around. Yeah, nobody else was really doing his act because he was doing his act. Right,
exactly. And, he was, in fact, what Dee and everybody else said was he was amazed that I was making a living doing no one but him. He never took himself seriously. The Jordanaires, we had many conversations on the bus and on airplanes and stuff. The Jordanaires and I became like brothers. We were very, very close. And they told me a million stories, but they said Elvis never took himself seriously. He never knew how big he was. He just thought he was going to be a passing fad, and he figured that, that people would forget him, a couple of years after he was gone. He just never took himself seriously.
Well, and for people who don't know, the Jordanaires, they were the backing group, the singers who backed up Elvis on a whole bunch of his hit songs.
Yeah, they were in 28 movies with him. Every time you seen his band on stage in all the movies they did, it was actually the Jordanaires. And they were on Ed Sullivan, the 4 guys that stood behind him and sang all the doo-wops and bop shawada wadas and all that stuff. That was the Jordanaires.
And those guys toured with you for a long time.
Yeah, 12 and a half years they came with me after Elvis passed away, and they were with me for 12 and a half years all over the world.
You know, I got to tell you, too, that says something about how great your act is. If these guys who sang with the real deal believed enough in you and what you were doing to lend their name to that.
Well, it was a real honor, let me put it that way. They were class act. You know, they all of them are passed away now except for one. The only one that's still living is the bass singer. And, you know, but all three of the other guys, in fact, Gordon Stoker, the tenor singer, just passed about a year and a half ago. And but they were great. They're super, super, super guys, and never once did I ever see that, you know, don't touch me, I'm a star image. And they were stars, you know, in their own right. But just great, great people. And I miss them dearly.
We are talking with Elvis Wade, who's got a Michigan show coming up on June 27th. Ticket information at KalamazooCountry.com, and it's going to be a great show. And we're talking about the king of rock and roll, but Elvis, his roots were in country music.
Yeah, actually, you know, of course, you know, he lived there in Memphis, but you know, he did every genre there was. You know, the only Grammys he ever won was for gospel music, which is really something.
Yeah.
You know, here's the biggest entertainer, singer, record seller in the world. I should tell you how much the Grammys mean it. I laugh at them because these people go, "Oh, me, I won." You know, those awards are all taken care of in advance. But the music industry was so jealous of Elvis. I mean, can you imagine the greatest singer in the whole world ever? You know, broke every record there ever possibly was, and he never received a Grammy. Does that tell you anything about the Grammys?
Yeah, I don't think I knew that.
I never won a Grammy, only in gospel music. You know, and he won 2 Grammys for gospel music. Was very proud of it, but he never complained. You know, he didn't complain about not winning any Grammys. But my goodness, I mean.
Well, you know what?
Rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, I think gospel was obviously important to him in the way he grew up, and that's it. I mean, he was a Southern boy, born and raised in Tupelo, and he had those manners.
Oh yeah, right. He was raised with a mom and dad that taught him yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, and he did. He was very respectful, a typical young Southern boy.
Yeah, you know, and after the 67 comeback special was big for him, and then really he made a move into most of his chart hits after that were country songs. Right.
He exactly right. He crossed over, his stuff did, until he came back. You know, he did that Memphis album with Chips Moman.
Boy, is that a great record. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if somebody listening hasn't heard that record, go find it and play it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's, you know, Suspicious Mind came from that album, and Kentucky Rain, In the Ghetto, all those you know, big songs came out of that session, and that was sort of a comeback for him, his career. You know, the Beatles came in with a whole different style of music, and they sort of changed the genre and the sound of rock and roll music. And so Elvis was not, you know, hot as he was, and so that album actually brought him right back into the spotlight all over again.
Oh, sure. There was the break while he was in the military, serving our country, and then he kind of got sidetracked, I think, with the movies, as there were some other, I think other people had other ideas on what he could do, and yeah, this was him getting back to what he did best.
Right. Well, Gordon Stoker, who was the tenor singer of the Jordanaires, he was more or less a spokesperson. When you see any interviews from the Jordanaires, 90% of the time you'll see him. He's the guy that's doing the interview. But, you know, he said if Elvis were alive today, he would be doing strictly gospel music. He said, boy, that's all he really wanted to do. He wished that he could have got out of rock and roll and just did gospel. You know, he loved gospel music. When they would go in and do a session, I heard so many stories about, you know, how Elvis would keep them up. You know, RCA paid for the studio, the big money, and Elvis would go in the studio and supposed to record a song, and he wouldn't even record the song. He would call the Jordanaires over to the piano, and they would sit there and sing gospel music till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with the engineers sitting back behind the control booth, you know, and Elvis was king. You know, you didn't tell him, hey, we got to record this song. Elvis would just turn around to the guys at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and say, well, you know what? I don't feel like a recording tonight. And he'd just walk out of the studio. And the engineers would throw their hands up in the air. And so they said there were many nights like that where they paid for the band to come in, for all the pickers and everything. And Elvis, all he did was sing gospel music around the piano, never recorded a song, walked out.
Well, you do all the songs in your act. We're going to see those on June 27th. And is that it? Is it kind of things from the beginning all the way to the end of the career?
Oh, yeah, I do. You know, I tell you, God blessed me with something that actually Elvis really himself couldn't do. You know, he later in life, his voice changed and he got more of the mature voice. And so he couldn't go back and do the hound dog and the teddy bear and the things, the way he sang them back when he was young. He couldn't get that sound. And so he would do them in a medley. But I'm still able to do the young Elvis and the older, mature Elvis and the middle one, too. So we'll be doing that, you know, all that genre. And then I also, I'm going to be doing, you know, I love Roy Orbison. I do some things, you know, in that show I'm going to be doing some other things. I kind of spread out a little bit where I do probably 6 or 7 Roy Orbison songs, which always brings the house down. He's a phenomenal singer.
Oh, indeed. That's incredible. I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to that. It's the first I've heard of that. I've got, I want to just let everybody know, I've got tickets to a private show you're doing on the 28th. There's still tickets available for the 27th. And I don't want to get you in trouble, so we got to mention your wife, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, Sandy, I married up in life. I married way above myself. But, yeah, I married Sandy Posey. A lot of your listeners out there would probably remember her. She was nominated for 2 Grammys, one with Paul McCartney and Barbra Streisand for Best Vocal Performance, male or female. And she had a lot of hit records that people will remember. She sang Born a Woman, Single Girl, I Take It Back, What a Woman in Love Won't Do, Happy, Happy Birthday, Baby, golly, I Love, Chapel of Love. I don't know, I'm going to miss some, so I'm going to stop naming. But anyway, she's a great songwriter and still sings phenomenal. She's a great singer, and people are going to love it. It's going to be 2 for the price of 1, you know. People always tell me, you know, she works with my show now. But you know, here's a little ditty that people don't know. Sandy actually sang on all those hits that Elvis had from that session that you're talking about. Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Kentucky Rain. Sandy, you know, she started her career as a backup singer, and her hits came out of American recording studios, which is where Elvis recorded that album. Chips Moman produced it, and he produced all of Sandy's hits. So she had the first hit to come out of that studio. And so when Elvis did that, they called Sandy. She's got such a smooth voice, and said, you know, we want to get you to come in and do vocals on that. So she's on all those big hits of Elvis's.
Oh, that's pretty great. So she knows the songs. Does she sing some of those with you then?
Oh yeah, she sings with me too. Also, you know, with my big show, you know, I carry 15 pieces on stage. I carry 4 male vocalists and 3 female vocalists and a full horn section, and I work a lot with symphony orchestras too. I played 20 major symphonies all over the United States. When I say major, I'm talking about like Atlanta, the Phoenix Symphony, the New Mexico Symphony, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, Sandy actually gets up on stage and sings the parts that she sang on the records. It's great. We have a great marriage, and we fit well together. She loved Elvis's music. She grew up in West Memphis, right across the river from Graceland.
You know what I think is fantastic? You guys have got such a great love story, and you're making a living out of doing music, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. We are. You know, if I want to mention one other thing too, a lot of people don't know. You know, I don't know how many people out there saw the movie The Identical with Ray Liotta and Ashley Judd. It was just out this last fall. It did phenomenal, and it won Best Picture out of 35 500 movies presented worldwide. I wrote the movie, The Identical, and and I do have a cameo appearance in it. So, we're going to have some of those there too at the show. I'm going to bring some of the videos with me.
Oh, outstanding! Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing the music. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the show. June 27th, all the details right here at KalamazooCountry.com. The next best thing to Elvis. It's the Elvis Wade Show. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us.
Oh, Bobby, my pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Really am. And God bless all my friends in Kalamazoo. I played there many times years ago.
Outstanding. We're looking forward to having you in the area.
All right, brother. Thanks a million.
Kalamazoo's Country 102.5.